Long before Derek Jacobi's iconic portrayal captivated millions, there was a darker, grittier Roman drama that nearly vanished into history's shadows. Granada Television's The Caesars pushed boundaries that would make even modern viewers squirm, launched international careers from laboratory assistants, and included an actor who played the same role twice, 8 years apart in 2 different productions. From its cursed status as the last great black and white epic to family connections with Doctor Who companions, this forgotten masterpiece hides secrets that would make any emperor jealous. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about The Caesars. Fact 1. Last of its kind. The final black and white epic. The Caesars holds a peculiar and unfortunate place in television history as the last large-scale historical drama series filmed in black and white by a major British television network. When Granada Television produced this ambitious 6-episode series about the Roman emperors in 1968, they were making a decision that would haunt the show's legacy for decades to come. The timing couldn't have been worse because color television was rapidly sweeping across Britain and the world, and within just a few years, black and white productions would seem hopelessly old-fashioned to audiences who were hungry for the vibrant new technology. The series premiered in September of 1968, right at the moment when the television industry was in the middle of a massive transition, and this meant that The Caesars looked dated almost from the moment it first appeared on screens. While the show received tremendous critical acclaim when it was first broadcast, with reviewers praising the intelligent scripts, powerful performances, and sophisticated political drama, its black and white format became an albatross around its neck. For nearly 40 years, the series remained largely unseen and forgotten, overshadowed by the BBC's 1976 color production of I, Claudius, which covered similar historical territory but had the advantage of being filmed in full color. Many television historians and critics now believe that if The Caesars had been made just 1 or 2 years later in color, it might have achieved the same lasting fame and cultural impact as its more famous successor. But instead it became a cautionary tale about the importance of timing in television production. Fact 2. Believed lost. For nearly 4 decades. For almost 40 years, The Caesars was believed to be completely lost to time, joining the ranks of countless other television productions from the 1960s that were wiped, destroyed, or simply misplaced in the decades before anyone understood the cultural value of preserving television history. After its initial broadcast in the autumn of 1968, the series effectively vanished from public view, becoming little more than a dimly remembered footnote in the minds of those lucky enough to have watched it during its original run. The black and white tapes sat in storage somewhere, gradually deteriorating while the rest of the world moved on and forgot that this ambitious Roman drama had ever existed. It wasn't until April of 2006 that Network, a company specializing in releasing classic British television on DVD, finally brought The Caesars back from obscurity with a 2-disc set that allowed a new generation to discover what had been hidden away for so long. However, the decades of neglect had taken their toll on the source materials, and reviewers were quick to note that the picture quality was sometimes rather dodgy, with the image appearing grainy and occasionally muddy due to the deterioration of the original videotapes. Despite these technical flaws, the mere fact that the series had survived at all was nothing short of miraculous, considering how many other productions from that era were lost forever when television studios routinely recorded over old tapes to save money or simply threw them away because they didn't think anyone would ever want to watch them again. Fact 3. The actor who played the same role twice. Kevin Stoney holds the unique and remarkable distinction of being the only actor to play the same character in both The Caesars in 1968 and I, Claudius, in 1976, portraying Thrasyllus the astrologer in 2 very different interpretations of the same historical period. Thrasyllus was a real figure from ancient Rome who served as the personal astrologer and confidant to the Emperor Tiberius. And Stoney had the rare opportunity to explore this character twice, with an 8-year gap between performances. What makes this casting choice especially fascinating is how dramatically different his 2 portrayals were, shaped entirely by the contrasting tones and characterizations of the 2 series. In The Caesars, Stoney's Thrasyllus was presented as an equal to Tiberius, a man who could look the emperor directly in the eye and speak to him with confidence and authority, engaging in frank man-to-man conversations about the future and the stars. However, in I, Claudius, the same actor played the same character in a completely different manner, portraying Thrasyllus as a nervous and frightened man who constantly cowered before the unpredictable and volatile George Baker version of Tiberius, always on edge and fearful of saying the wrong thing. This dramatic shift in characterization wasn't a choice made by Stoney himself, but rather a necessity, dictated by how differently the two productions portrayed the Emperor Tiberius, with the Caesars presenting him as a more sympathetic and rational figure. While I, Claudius, depicted him as a dangerous and unstable tyrant whose very presence made everyone around him nervous. Fact 4. From laboratory assistant to world's best TV actor Freddie Jones, who played the stuttering Emperor Claudius in the Caesars, had one of the most unlikely paths to stardom in television history, spending 10 years working as a laboratory assistant at the British Ceramic Research Association before making a dramatic midlife career change to pursue acting. Jones had dabbled in amateur theater while working his day job in the laboratories, but it wasn't until he won a scholarship to the Rose Bruford College of Speech and Drama that he was able to leave his scientific career behind and dedicate himself fully to the performing arts. After training at drama school, he worked in repertory theater and eventually joined the prestigious Royal Shakespeare Company, where he gained recognition for his intelligence and skill as a character actor. His big break came when he was cast as Claudius in the Caesars at the age of 40, playing the role of the emperor who survived by pretending to be a harmless fool while plotting his own path to power. Jones brought a darker and more calculating edge to Claudius than audiences would see in later portrayals, creating a character who was both sympathetic and unsettling at the same time. His performance was so remarkable that it earned him the World's Best Television Actor of the Year award at the 1969 Monte Carlo Television Festival, an international honor that instantly elevated him from a respected British character actor to a name recognized around the world. This recognition launched an international career that would span decades and include memorable collaborations with director David Lynch in films like The Elephant Man, Dune, and Wild at Heart, proving that it's never too late to change careers and find success in a completely different field. Fact 5. The Louis Pasteur Connection. Ralph Bates, who delivered a chilling and unforgettable performance as the Mad Emperor Caligula in the Caesars, came from surprisingly distinguished scientific lineage as the great-great-nephew of Louis Pasteur, the legendary French scientist who revolutionized medicine with his discoveries about germs and vaccination. Bates was born in Bristol, England in 1940 to parents who were both psychiatrists, and his mother was French, which is how he inherited his connection to one of history's most important medical pioneers. He held dual nationality and was completely bilingual in English and French, which would prove useful throughout his acting career when he was frequently cast to play French characters on British television. After studying at Trinity College Dublin and winning a scholarship to Yale Drama School, Bates returned to Ireland to begin his stage career before eventually making his way into television and film. His dark, handsome features, pale complexion, and striking raven black hair made him perfect for playing sinister characters, and his portrayal of Caligula in the Caesars showcased his ability to be both imperiously commanding and deeply unsettling at the same time. This performance caught the attention of Hammer Film Productions, the British studio, famous for Gothic horror movies, and Bates soon became known as Hammer Horror's Dark Prince, specializing in roles as mad scientists and Gothic villains in films like Taste the Blood of Dracula, The Horror of Frankenstein, and Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, where he played a deranged doctor who transforms himself into a beautiful woman. The irony of Louis Pasteur's descendant becoming famous for playing mad scientists and unhinged doctors was not lost on film critics and fans who appreciated the strange symmetry of his family history and his career choices. Fact 6. Caligula's launchpad to horror stardom. The Caesars served as Ralph Bates's true breakthrough role, and his performance as the unstable Emperor Caligula directly opened the doors to a successful career in horror cinema that would define the rest of his professional life. Before playing Caligula, Bates had only minor television appearances and small roles, but his portrayal of Rome's most infamous Mad Emperor caught the attention of producers at Hammer Film Productions, the legendary British studio that was in the middle of revitalizing the horror genre with their gothic tales of vampires, werewolves, and monsters. What impressed these horror producers was not over-the-top theatrics or scenery chewing, but rather Bates's restrained and genuinely menacing approach to playing Caligula, showing a man who grew increasingly dangerous and unpredictable as he descended into madness throughout the series. Unlike later portrayals of Caligula that would emphasize camp and excess, Bates played the character as someone who was imperiously contemptuous and coldly calculating, creating a sense of real menace that made viewers uncomfortable rather than entertained. Hammer executives saw the potential for Gothic villainy in his dark features, pale complexion, and ability to convey threat without raising his voice, and they quickly signed him to appear in a series of horror films starting in 1970. His first Hammer role came in Taste the Blood of Dracula, where he played the demonic Lord Courtly, followed by starring roles as Baron Frankenstein in The Horror of Frankenstein and as the title character in Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, where he transformed into a beautiful but deadly woman, cementing his status as one of Hammer's leading actors during the studio's final successful years in the early 1970s. Fact 7. The grandfather-granddaughter connection. Writer and producer Philip Mackey, the creative force behind the Caesars who wrote all 6 episodes and served as the series producer, died on December 23, 1985, 18 months before his granddaughter, Pearl Mackey, was born into the world. Philip Mackey had enjoyed a long and distinguished career in British television, working as one of the first staff scriptwriters employed by the BBC in 1955, and going on to create acclaimed series and adaptations throughout the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. He won numerous awards during his lifetime, including 2 BAFTA TV awards, the Prix Italia and the Broadcasting Press Guild Award, cementing his reputation as one of Britain's finest television writers. His granddaughter Pearl, who never had the chance to meet him, would eventually follow in his creative footsteps by becoming an actress, though she would make her mark in a very different corner of British television history. Pearl Mackey became widely known to audiences around the world when she was cast as Bill Potts, a companion to the 12th Doctor played by Peter Capaldi in the long-running science fiction series Doctor Who during the show's 10th series in 2017. This created a fascinating and unexpected link between a gritty black and white drama about ancient Roman emperors from 1968 and one of Britain's most beloved modern science fiction franchises, with grandfather and granddaughter both leaving their marks on British television history despite never meeting each other. The Mackey family clearly had storytelling in their blood, with Philip crafting tales of political intrigue in ancient Rome, while Pearl brought warmth and intelligence to her portrayal of a companion traveling through time and space. Fact 8. BAFTA winner, overshadowed by its successor. Despite winning the prestigious BAFTA TV award for writer-producer Philip Mackey and receiving tremendous critical acclaim when it first aired, The Caesars has been almost completely overshadowed in popular memory by the BBC's I, Claudius, which premiered 8 years later in 1976 and covered much of the same historical territory with a very different approach. The BBC production, adapted from Robert Graves' best-selling novels Counter Claudius and Claudius the God, took a more sensationalistic and melodramatic route, emphasizing the sex, scandal, and intrigue of imperial Rome with memorable performances from actors like Derek Jacobi, John Hurt, and Sian Phillips as the scheming Livia. While the Caesars had focused on political nuance and presented the emperors as complex human beings with understandable motives, I, Claudius, leaned into the more lurid and entertaining aspects of Roman history, creating unforgettable scenes of murder, manipulation, and madness that captivated audiences and won numerous awards. The fact that I, Claudius, was filmed in color also gave it a significant advantage, as it looked fresh and modern compared to the Caesars, which already seemed like a relic from an earlier era of television despite being less than a decade old. I, Claudius, became one of the most celebrated television productions of all time, winning multiple Emmy Awards, a Peabody Award, and several BAFTAs, and it has been repeatedly released on VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray, ensuring that new generations continue to discover it. Meanwhile, the Caesars languished in obscurity for decades, and even today, when people discuss great television dramas about ancient Rome, I, Claudius, is almost always the only title mentioned, leaving the Caesars as a forgotten footnote that only dedicated television historians and classic drama enthusiasts know about. Fact 9. Direct quotes from ancient history. The series demonstrated remarkable historical accuracy by faithfully recreating actual dialogue from ancient sources, with writer Philip Mackey drawing directly from classical historians like Suetonius, Tacitus, and Cassius Dio to bring authentic voices from the past into his scripts. One of the most striking examples of this commitment to historical authenticity appears in the very first episode, during the deathbed scene of Emperor Augustus, where the dying ruler asks for a mirror, has his hair combed and his sagging jaw propped up, and then addresses his friends with a line that was actually documented by the Roman historian Suetonius nearly 2,000 years ago. Augustus asks those gathered around him, "Have I played my part well in the comedy of life?" Then applaud, a quote that Suetonius recorded as being spoken in Greek verse rather than Latin, adding an extra layer of theatrical flair to the emperor's final performance. This particular moment is especially poignant because it shows Augustus treating his entire reign as if it were a play, with himself as the lead actor performing for an audience, and now asking for their approval as the curtain falls on his life. The fact that Mackey chose to include this specific historical quote rather than inventing his own dramatic dialogue demonstrates the series' commitment to staying true to the historical record whenever possible. Throughout all 6 episodes, the scripts continued this practice of incorporating genuine quotes and documented conversations from ancient sources, giving viewers a sense that they were witnessing real moments from history rather than purely fictionalized drama, even though the series still had to fill in gaps and create conversations where the historical record was silent. Fact 10. Studio bound, yet ambitious. The entire series was shot on studio sets at Granada Television's Manchester studios in England, with every scene filmed indoors on constructed sets rather than on location. Yet the production paradoxically managed to create larger and more populated environments than the BBC's later I, Claudius, despite having a smaller budget and working in black and white. This might seem counterintuitive because you would naturally expect that a color production made 8 years later with more money and resources would be able to afford bigger sets and more elaborate staging. But observers who have watched both series carefully have noted that the Caesars consistently featured more expansive set designs and a greater number of background actors filling out the Roman Senate and other crowd scenes. The Senate scenes in particular stand out, with Granada apparently able to afford many more actors to play senators, creating a sense of a truly populated governing body rather than just a handful of people standing around in togas. I, Claudius, despite its larger budget and prestigious BBC backing, spent a disproportionate amount of time filming in just one luxuriously dressed palace set that was shot from different angles to create variety, giving the series a somewhat claustrophobic and studio-bound feeling despite the dramatic events taking place. The fact that the Caesars was shot in black and white may have actually worked in its favor when it came to set design, because the lack of color meant that the sets didn't need to be as elaborately detailed or expensively dressed to look convincing on screen, allowing the production to spend more of its budget on scale and scope rather than on color-accurate props and costumes. Fact 11. 3 actors, 2 series, 8 years. Besides Kevin Stoney, who uniquely played the same character in both productions, 2 other actors appeared in both the Caesars and I, Claudius, creating an interesting connection between the 2 series that were made 8 years apart and covered the same period of Roman history. Donald Eccles appeared in the Caesars as Nerva, one of Emperor Tiberius's most trusted advisors, delivering a memorable performance as someone who gave eccentric but invaluable counsel to the troubled emperor during his difficult reign. 8 years later, Eccles appeared in I, Claudius, in a very different but equally important role as the historian Pollio, who had one particularly significant scene where he offered crucial advice to the main character, showcasing his talent for playing wise elder figures who provide guidance at critical moments. The third actor to bridge both productions was John Paul, who played Marcus Agrippa in I, Claudius, the trusted general and son-in-law of Emperor Augustus, who helped secure the early empire through his military victories and political acumen. In the Caesars, Paul took on the completely different role of Cassius Chaerea, the Praetorian Guard commander, who becomes the principal assassin of Emperor Caligula after being pushed to the breaking point by the mad emperor's constant insults and humiliations. Paul brought a grizzled military veteran quality to Cassius Chaerea that made him look more convincingly like a hardened soldier than his counterpart in I, Claudius, where the role was played by Sam Dastor with heavy makeup to age him. The presence of these three actors in both series created an unintentional link between the productions and demonstrated the relatively small pool of experienced character actors working in British television during the 1960s and 70s. Fact 12. Pushing 1968's boundaries. The series contained graphic violence and sexual perversity that must have pushed the edge of the envelope very far indeed by the standards of 1968. When British television was still operating under strict censorship guidelines and social attitudes about what could be shown on screen were considerably more conservative than they are today. While The Caesars presented itself as a serious historical drama focused on political intrigue and the exercise of power, it did not shy away from depicting the more disturbing and violent aspects of life under the Roman emperors, showing scenes of murder, torture, and cruelty that would have been shocking to audiences who were used to much tamer fare on their television screens. The series was particularly bold in its portrayal of Emperor Caligula's descent into madness and depravity, with Ralph Bates growing increasingly confident in showing demonstrations of same-sex affection as his character became more unhinged and brutal throughout the episodes. This depiction of same-sex relationships was potentially groundbreaking for late 1960s British television, coming at a time when homosexuality had only been decriminalized in England and Wales the previous year in 1967, and when any representation of gay relationships on mainstream television was still extremely rare and controversial. The fact that the series connected this affection with Caligula's growing cruelty and insanity raises complex questions about whether this representation was progressive for its time, or whether it reinforced negative stereotypes. But regardless of interpretation, the mere presence of such content on primetime television in 1968 demonstrated that The Caesars was willing to tackle difficult and potentially offensive subject matter in ways that few other programs dared to attempt. Fact 13. The more historically accurate version. Unlike I, Claudius, which was based on Robert Graves's admittedly fictionalized novels that took considerable creative liberties with historical events and characters, The Caesars drew directly from classical historical sources, including Tacitus's Annals, Suetonius's Lives of the 12 Caesars, and Cassius Dio's Roman History, making it the more scholarly and historically grounded of the two productions. Robert Graves himself acknowledged that his novels I, Claudius, and Claudius the God were works of historical fiction that prioritized dramatic storytelling over strict adherence to the historical record. And while he did extensive research into ancient Rome, he freely invented dialogue, created conspiracy theories, and exaggerated certain characters to make them more entertaining for modern readers. Philip Mackey, the writer of The Caesars, took a fundamentally different approach by going back to the original ancient sources and basing his scripts as closely as possible on what the Roman historians actually recorded, sometimes even using translations of actual dialogue when the historical texts provided specific quotes. This commitment to historical accuracy meant that The Caesars presented the emperors and their associates as more nuanced and complex human beings, rather than as the exaggerated villains and victims that populated Graves's novels. For example, Emperor Tiberius in The Caesars is portrayed much more sympathetically as a capable but reluctant ruler who gradually becomes bitter and isolated, which is closer to what careful reading of Tacitus suggests. While I, Claudius, presented him as a monster almost from the beginning. The Caesars also avoided some of the more sensational conspiracy theories that Graves invented, such as Livia poisoning multiple family members to secure the succession, focusing instead on the political realities and documented events that shaped the early Roman Empire. Fact 14. Channel 4's 30th anniversary choice. In 1985, Channel 4 chose to broadcast the final episode, titled Claudius, as part of their special celebration of 30 years of Granada Television, which had been producing high-quality programming from 1956 to 1986, demonstrating that the Caesars still held an enduring reputation among television professionals and industry insiders, even though it remained largely unknown to the general public. This decision to showcase the Caesars as one of the representative highlights of Granada's 3 decades of television production is particularly significant because Channel 4 could have selected any number of Granada's more popular or commercially successful programs to feature in their anniversary celebration. The fact that they specifically chose to air the final episode of this black and white historical drama from 1968 rather than something more recent or more widely remembered by viewers, shows that people working within the television industry recognize the Caesars as a landmark achievement in British television drama that deserved to be honored and remembered. The final episode, Claudius, was an especially fitting choice because it depicted the climactic assassination of the mad Emperor Caligula and the unexpected elevation of Claudius to the imperial throne, with the memorable scene of Claudius being discovered hiding behind a curtain by the Praetorian Guard, who declare him Caesar despite his protests and terror. By the time of this anniversary broadcast in 1985, the series had been off the air for 17 years and was extremely difficult for ordinary viewers to see, making this Channel 4 broadcast a rare opportunity for a new generation to discover what television professionals considered one of Granada's finest achievements in historical drama. Fact 15. The Naked Civil Servant Connection writer Philip Mackey later wrote the screenplay for The Naked Civil Servant in 1975, a television film about the flamboyant and openly gay writer Quentin Crisp. And this script earned John Hurt the BAFTA Award for Best Actor for his transformative performance in the lead role. This created a strange and fascinating circle of connections, because Mackey had written The Caesars in 1968, with Ralph Bates delivering a restrained and menacing portrayal of the mad Emperor Caligula. Then 7 years later, Mackey wrote the script that won John Hurt his breakthrough BAFTA Award. And then just 1 year after that, in 1976, Hurt went on to play the exact same Roman emperor in the BBC's I, Claudius, with a completely different interpretation that emphasized camp theatricality and over-the-top madness. The irony of this situation was not lost on television critics and historians, who noticed that the same writer had been responsible for 2 very different versions of Caligula, even though he only wrote one of them directly, while also being the person who gave John Hurt the career-defining role that made him famous enough to be cast as the emperor in the competing series. Hurt's performance as Caligula in I, Claudius became one of the most iconic and memorable portrayals of the character ever put on screen, with his line, "Do you think I'm going crazy? No, be honest?" becoming widely quoted and parodied, but his journey to that role began with Philip Mackey's script for The Naked Civil Servant, which showcased Hurt's ability to play complex, challenging characters who existed outside of society's norms and expectations.